Hey, all right, welcome to our second ever design workshop. I am pretty excited. And I have a decision to make. I don't know whether to continue the game that I've started designing last week or whether to start a completely new one. Right? Imagine finishing games. Wouldn't be me. That being said, I completely forgot to set up some music. Also, my gain is kind of busted. It's weird. My microphone settings have been weird ever since I tweaked them a while ago, and now they're just not the same anymore. Okay, let's try this. I don't know if this does anything. But let's just try. Okay. I wanted to set up some music. I know the chatting screen has music, but later when I switch to Krita to start taking notes. Apparently some people call it Krita. I don't know. All right. Let's see. Let me switch over. Okay, lots of notes. Okay, right. So what's the deal with design workshop? So basically, I have been playing and designing role-playing games for a long time. Board games and other tabletop as well, but mainly role-playing games. But and I do talk a lot about game design on my stream when I play games and such. But I've never, well, as of last week I have, but I was thinking there are a lot of people who play role playing games, right? And they are very, very interesting, but also kind of opaque. And many people really only know the one game. So I was thinking, you know what? Why not design some things live on stream so that people can understand role playing games a bit more, understand or learn about the wonderful wide open world that is possible with role playing games. And also, if they want to do some designing themselves, either a whole game or homebrew their favorite game a bit and change things up, this could help. So here we are. Uh, let's see if people enjoy. Okay. So last week I started designing a an Eldritch horror mythos investigation um role playing game, as you can see here. Started with some high level design goals, which I may need to revise, or I may need to revise some of the design. I realized, and the reason I wanted to potentially start a new game is because I've designed myself into a corner. um, there's a lot of, but then again, okay, ideas are coming again. As soon as I start talking about this, ideas are coming, and then everything is a jumble. I have designed myself into a bit of a corner as down here. This is the big note. It's like missing RP incentive, and that's the biggest one for me. Whenever I design things, that's like I want to make a tight mechanical design, but then it turns into a board game rather than a role playing game, and that's something I know I personally have to work on. Mm. So I could continue with this design, though I'm not sure how much I'll be able to actually do. It will be a lot of just if this, then that, and ideation, like coming up with and dismissing or modifying, and just thinking about a lot of ideas in my head. Um, so I was thinking about starting a new one. Doesn't mean that this one will be abandoned. Maybe I can come back to it later. Just right now, I'm a bit out of ideas. I did think about this game. Uh, over the week, right? Um, thinking about, oh, I need to come out of this dead end, this corner that I've got myself into. So, decisions. Let's continue with this one. See how far we get, and I can always start a new one either later today or next week. Because this is also part of design, right? Continuing your things. continuing your projects. Okay. So what do I actually have so far? I have a Cthulhu Mythos. Like, what's the game about? Cthulhu Mythos investigators who risk losing their humanity as they delve deeper into the mystery and the mythos itself. So this is pretty standard fare, right? In most Cthulhu games, you lose sanity instead of humanity. I just think sanity is a bit of a problematic term, so I changed it. Right, how is the game about that? How is the game about this thing? Characters need to constantly be wary that investigating costs their humanity, and they need to actively try to balance and restore it. Right? Because you don't want to lose your humanity. But also, characters have a drive to investigate. This is very important. Otherwise, it's very, very easy. This is really a help for the players, right? And for group cohesion. It's saying, well, you cannot create a character who who essentially murder hobos. Right. Who in this version of the game. Or who is this game's version of the murder hobo who doesn't want to investigate, who has to be pulled by their hairs into the mystery, and then they thwart it and like thwart the investigation and sabotage the investigation at every turn. It's like, no, 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 no. We're not gonna allow that because that goes against the spirit of the game. That goes against what this game wants to do. Holy heck, huge rain all of a sudden. Sorry. Um so a character must have a drive to investigate. Right? A reason why. And I just realized this can be something I can use in the game. Alright. What behaviors does the game incentivize? Of course, investigating and covering more of the mystery. Right? That's based on the drive. Maintaining humanity. Because if you don't have your humanity anymore, you you lose your character. That's it. And also collaboration, cooperation. This is a big one, right? Because the idea of the game is the characters are all a bunch of normal people who don't necessarily know each other, all in over their heads together in this mystery. And they must work together to solve it. And there must be some way to incentivize this whole collaboration and cooperation aspect between the players. Right. What do the players do? Right. They need to navigate and balance the two opposing motivations of the character, which is investigating versus humanity. And it would have helped to have these on screen while designing the next bit. Because hello? I basically designed something off on a different direction, which can also work. Right? You don't need to slavishly stick to your design goals, but if you look back at your design goals, you can get some ideas on how to solve things possibly. So the core mechanic is humanity versus time limit. Is the one I came up with. Meaning every PC has a humanity stat or a humanity pool, right? When humanity hits 0, the PC becomes unplayable somehow, right? They go insane, they die, they become a monster, they something, right? They get taken away by Cthulhu. I don't know, right? So it's essentially the PC's hit points. Investigating costs humanity, but it's a risk. It's not a guaranteed cost. It's a risk. So you are able to gamble, right? You can say, "Oh, I want to risk investigating this thing further, get more clues. And I might come out all right. I might not lose any humanity during doing this. Right. So certain actions restore humanity, and this must be opposed to investigating somehow. This was still in the design ideation. So the idea was you have restoration actions that have consequences that affect the investigation. Okay. So players must choose between continuing investigation versus restoring humanity. And this got the idea of time limits, right? Mechanically enforced time limits. So there is a pool of points called, I don't know what it's called, but like time points, time limit points, whatever. Names, you can worry about that later down the line. And if this runs out, the adventure is over. Because the investigation always runs on a time limit, and time limits are super easy to enforce on Eldritch horror investigations, right? There's some ritual being cast, there's some monster to be contacted, there's some person to be sacrificed, there's some artifact to be moved or constructed, restored, whatever, right? And the players race against time to try and stop this before it reaches its culmination, right? And this is kind of like the adventure's hit points in this sense. And this is something that continuously ticks down and puts a hard limit on how much you can dally. And restoring humanity is, in a sense, dallying because you're not continuing the investigation. So this was a very quick mechanical resolution mechanic, core resolution mechanic idea. So you have humanity that goes from 0 to 5. And you roll, right, some number of 6-sided dice. And you pick one of these dice that you have rolled. And the lower the value, the better the success. Right? Hold on. These two, I think I messed those up. I think. Okay, these two are a bit confusing right now. Ignore these. Right, so you want a lower value. Lower value is better success. It is possible to turn this whole thing around by renaming humanity to something like corruption, or so having it go up. And then you roll high in order to succeed. It's like turning dice mechanics around, going up or going down, is relatively easy because the math mostly stays the same. So you roll some number of d6, you pick one die, and then the lower your value, the better your success. But also, if you roll below your current humanity, equal or below your current humanity, there we go, then you lose one humanity. I am going to shift these two around because these two are confusing me. So this is the success, and this is the fail. Yeah. Oops. Right? So you basically choose between succeeding this. Well, no, not between succeeding the action, but rather, do you succeed with or without consequences? And then, do you want to have humanity? right? So a lower value means better success, but also losing humanity. A higher value means worse success or success with a cost and consequences, but you maintain your humanity. So this is a choice to make. And then there's the time limit. Every scene costs one time limit, so you have to choose between an investigative scene or a resting scene. Right? And then you have, this does require that I put in very clear scene framing guides and possibly mechanics, right? And then you have a mechanical resolution at the end based on the narrative, based on how the scene played out. Right? So the idea now is not that this is a role that you do whenever you do something uncertain, right? It's a role you do at the end to see if you got the clues you need and if you are able to get away with them, right? So in an investigative scene, you have degree of success versus loss of humanity as the deciding factor. And then resting, the idea is that you have certain connections to people or to activities or something that restore humanity when you pursue them, right? Like hanging out with family or spending time in a bar or walking your dog, whatever. And the idea now is that this role at the end determines the amount of humanity restored versus losing this connection, right? Meaning you can no longer use it or it's less effective. But here's the rub, and I'll use cyan for my thoughts here. So this is an investigative scenes. Because each investigative scene builds upon what previously came, right? You you will roleplay, and the resolution is, right, is based on okay, does this um, on what happened in the scene, right? Mechanical resolution is based on the events of the scene. So it's like, what do we roll for? What are the stakes? Uh, what is the next scene, or what is another scene further down the line? So this, because all of this is a continuous story. It builds on each other, right? The resting scenes just kind of come out of nowhere and don't build on anything. And I would like there to be some incentive to roleplay these, right? Again, players are able to roleplay over anything. Players who want to roleplay are able to roleplay over anything. And they will roleplay over anything. But I don't want to have to rely, so to speak, on this type of initiative to, or I want to also add an incentive to roleplay somehow. Because otherwise this becomes a board game where the players just say, okay, my character will pursue this scene, and now I will roll, done, next scene. And then you do this in a minute. Like, eh. So I'm not sure if this part makes sense. Right? Essentially, the more mechanical structure you have, the less role playing has to happen. Think about board games. Board games are pure mechanical structure, and you don't have to role play because you can play the game just by following along the mechanical structure. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, etc. Now, that's not saying that role playing games cannot have strong mechanical structures. I believe they should to a certain extent. But then you also need to leave space for the role playing, and you need to leave space for the role playing. I think is important. So because the wonderful thing about role playing games, as opposed to say board games or card games, is the interweaving of the mechanics and the shared storytelling, right? And if you only have the mechanics and leave no space for the uh, storytelling, or rather, if the mechanics don't hook into the storytelling and the storytelling doesn't hook into the mechanics, but the mechanics only hook into themselves, that's when you get a problem. Right? The two need to interweave and influence each other and go from one to the next. That is what makes a strong role playing game. Right? Essentially you have uh the conversation, which is the role playing, and it leads to mechanics, right? Which ones you choose, how you interpret them, and then you go back, leads with prompts and such to the conversation. Whereas a board game is mostly just this, right? Mechanics, and then you get a result on some other mechanics, and they lead into, well, it's more like this. But yeah. Also, ads are gonna play, so I will take this moment to eat some breakfast. This is horrible. Handwriting, please. Right. All right. But yeah, take this moment, eat some breakfast because it is early here. And I haven't had anything yet. Mm. So this is the biggest conundrum I have right now.
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
But yeah, this is a lot of I guess it's partially why I never complete any projects. I design myself in corners and then I give up. Let me add a third one right here real quick. All right, ads are over. What did I just do? There we go. Just for completeness' sake, I'm adding a third thing here that I kind of touched on or talked about last time, but this is making it explicit. So, in a board game, you have mechanics that feed into other mechanics, right? You have some mechanics, and then the outcomes of that mechanic influence other mechanics or trigger other mechanics that then go back to those mechanics, etc., etc. You start your turn, I don't know, draw a card, and then you choose what mechanically defined action to take. And then based on that action, I don't know, you get a resource, or you move your pawn or whatever. And then it's the end of your turn, and then the next turn starts, and so on. So you have a lot of the basic, you have scene framings, you have the starts and the middles and the ends, you pay something to get something. You have a lot of the same basic structures, but it's just mechanics feeding into mechanics. In an RPG, you have conversation and mechanics feeding into each other. And this is the big thing, right? You have the shared storytelling, the shared narrative, and based on what happens in the narrative, based on your choices in the narrative, you trigger certain mechanics or you employ certain mechanics. And then these mechanics then create some result that then influences the continuation of the story. Right? Now, of course, you can have small loops like this as well. Right? Sometimes some mechanics do feed into other mechanics, but at some point you have to return to the conversation. And then the conversation is just role playing without the mechanics, right? You can just, if you want to listen at a door, you just listen at the door. If you want to open the door and walk through, you just open the door and walk through. There's no mechanic involved, right? If you want to, I don't know, go to a tavern and pay for a room, you just go there, go to a tavern and pay for a room, done. No mechanics involved. Right. No, and different games define when mechanics come into play. Right. Some define it more stringently than others. Some are very much just, oh, GM decides, whereas some are much more precise. D&D, for instance, it's very much GM decides, right? GM makes a judgment call on uh, based on a couple of guidelines, like, is this a risky or uncertain action, or with a risky and uncertain outcome? And you roll. You call for a roll, and then you roll the mechanics, and then based on success or failure, most of the time, that's how it works in D&D, you continue the story. So if you are, I don't know, trying to convince a guard to let you through, classic example, and you roll a persuasion check, and if you succeed, the conversation proceeds in a direction where you have indeed succeeded to persuade the guard and now get into wherever it was you wanted to get into. If you fail, then the conversation proceeds like you failed, because that's exactly what the mechanics tell you. And then you don't get in and have to find another way or pursue some other path. Right? That's what I mean with mechanics influencing the conversation and conversation influencing the mechanics. You can also choose in the conversation not to talk to the guard, or you can choose to talk to him or her or them and try to intimidate instead of persuade. Right? And then that's a different role with different mechanics, maybe with different outcomes. Right? That's what I mean. Now, last week, yesterday, imagine, last week, I also talked about pure roleplay, which is no mechanics. Conversation leads into conversation, leads into more conversation. And this is where I say, okay, yes, roleplay, awesome, lots of fun. I've done that myself as well. And many people do it, like any improv groups and such. That's basically all they're just role playing, right? But there are no mechanics, and at that point, you're not playing a role playing game. You're just doing the role play. You may have some other structure or prompt generation or so. And then this is not a line cutting these two. This is like you can blend them. It's a spectrum in a way. Just like how you have a lot of adventure board games and such, which are starting to blend, and very structured RPGs on the other side, which are starting to blend this line, right? So this is a spectrum. It's probably more confusing having these here. Okay. But if people say, "Oh, we played a 4 hour session and didn't touch the dice once," and so on, didn't even have to look at our character sheets. Like, okay, that's great. It's awesome you had fun. But were you actually playing the RPG at that point? That's what I was trying to get at. And when designing an RPG, you should watch it. You're sticking in here somehow. It is relatively difficult to design an RPG that swings very much to the roleplay side, but it is fairly easy, as I'm demonstrating right now, to design an RPG that swings very far to the board game side. And the reason it's so easy is because most people base their RPG design and experience and play experience off of D&D because that's the one they had, and D&D swings relatively far to the board game side. Not completely, it is still an RPG. I'm not disputing that. But compared to what kinds of RPGs are out there, compared to the whole breadth of possibilities and designs and such, D&D is more toward the board game side of the spectrum, or is shifting a bit toward there. And part of that is the design, part of that is the guidance that is given or the lack of guidance that is given, right? But D&D swings all over the place, and that's what I think makes it strange. Right? It's like the thing I'm thinking about when I say D&D has very strong board game elements is combat, but then everything else in D&D is almost pure roleplay, and that is a very strange dichotomy to have in a single game. So this is what I'm talking about. Missing RP incentive. Resting scenes right now are pure board game. Right? You look at your character sheet and you see I have this connection. You pick that and you say, all right, then I use the scene framing mechanics. I pay one time limit and frame a resting scene. Okay. And then I roll dice. And then I either regain some humanity, lose connection somehow. There was no role playing involved because everything can be done just by the mechanics. And I don't want that. That's what I mean with giving an RP incentive. It's not so much an RP incentive, now that I think about it. It's there is no space left for the role playing, right? It's mechanics influencing other mechanics, leading into other mechanics. There's no mechanics leading into a conversation, which then influences the mechanics. which is different in investigative scenes, right? The mechanics are influenced by the events of the scene, and then the result of the mechanics influences the continuation of the story. You don't have that in resting scenes, and I don't know how to put them in, mainly because I don't understand them well enough yet. So, I guess all of that talk just to say I was trying to figure out where the problem actually is, where it actually lies. So, hello? Um, what is happening? No, okay. Let me just grab this color real quick as well. Okay. So, what am I looking at? I am looking at the problem is basically so right. So it helps to talk through it like this, right? Problem. I forgot. Um resting scenes. Uh leave no space for RP. Um and then the mechanics don't prompt story, and story doesn't prompt. I'm just going to use the word prompt here. Mechanics, right? So this is what's missing here. And this is because right now, resting scenes. Oh, God. Are isolated interludes. With a okay, I'm starting to think. Okay, so also this pen is still a little bit. This brush is still a little bit too thick. So, uh, chosen from a mechanical desire. Restore humanity instead of a narrative one. So what do I mean by this? Basically, when you are looking at a investigation scene, right? Which scene you pick, how you frame it, where you go, the starting of the conversation, etc., is all based on what has come before, right? So an investigation scene is like you have so the thought process is something like, oh, we have wow, this is horrible handwriting. X, Y, Z, X, Y. I cannot spell today. Holy. X, Y, Z. Clues. They lead us to A, B, C. Let's check out B. Right? Something like that. And this is all narrative. This is in the story, in the reality of the story, right? There are no mechanics telling you, oh, you have these and these clue cards, and then draw this other card uh, based on your combination of clue cards or based on what the clue cards are telling you, and then you play that thing or something. No, this is all in the narrative, right? And maybe we have this and that consequence that forces us to do this, but that's also part of the story. Whereas resting is so this is all in story. And then resting is I have low humanity. I must recharge it. And this is a mechanical decision. Right? Because you're looking at your mechanic, humanity, and then you're saying, okay, I need to recharge my humanity, which is also mechanical. And then you go, all right, so let me initiate a resting scene. And the end result of the mechanic is you recharge some humanity, right? Or you lose connection, or a bit of both. But that, again, is determined by a mechanic that was decided on the moment you decided to have a resting scene. So it's the mechanics of humanity. Yeah, you look at your humanity. So it's low humanity, which is mechanical, leads to a start resting scene, which is also mechanical, which leads to resolution, which is also mechanical, which leads to regain humanity or lose connection, which is also mechanical. All of these steps are mechanical. So there's nothing in here that is a story step. Whereas here in investigation, you have look at state of investigation, which is story, right? Start investigation scene. This is kind of mechanical, right? Play the scene, and then you have the resolution. Hold on, I can write this better. Oh my goodness. Right, this is mechanical. And then you have the outcome, which is story again. So let me go this. So let me mark these. This is narrative. This is narrative. This is narrative, right? Plus some mechanical. There's some mechanical stuff sprinkled in there. Losing humanity is, of course, mechanical, but then how the story continues. Do you get the clue? Are there any complications and such? That is all narrative. Right, so this is narrative, narrative, narrative. And then this is mechanical, mechanical. And here, everything is mechanical. And that's the problem, right? So this is what you want to have, this interplay of conversation, mechanics that lead to more conversation, that lead to more mechanics, that lead to more conversation, etc., 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 etc. Right? This is what you want to have. And this is what I currently have for resting scenes. That's what I need to fix. All right, so where can I? So the fact this leading to a resting scene, this I cannot change because that's unless I want resting scenes to serve some sort of double purpose, which but then again, the whole point of the resting scene is that you do not deal with the investigation because the investigation is what causes you to lose humanity, right? So it's not like, oh, retreat to your apartment and mull over the current state of the investigation and try to connect clues and analyze and stuff. No, no, no. That's still dealing with the investigation. You could still lose humanity. That's the whole point. You need to stay away from it, right? So this makes narrative sense. Staying away from the investigation completely makes narrative sense. It's a narrative justification. I will take it. Start the resting scene. Okay. But in here, somewhere, I need narrative, right? So somewhere in here, how can the resolution be affected? And at this point, this is because I don't have clear mechanics yet. So at this point, I need to design actual mechanics. All right, so mechanics of humanity and losing, right? Losing plus regaining. Okay, so this is what I need to focus on. Losing I already talked about, right? Lose during come on. Scene resolution of investigation. Right? And that I talked about, the core resolution mechanic, etc. Think. They have humanity from 0 to 5. And then you roll and you pick if it's lower or equal to your current humanity, you lose it. Right. So because the scale is so small, right? It's a 6-point scale. Regaining multiple points of humanity is really, really powerful and really, really desirable. And losing the ability to regain multiple points is something players really don't want, which is why I can put it in there as a stick. Mm. Hmm. Crazy idea building right now. What if resting scenes play out in a bidding war? So I have to design a minigame, a bidding minigame. Hmm. Ads will start soon. Let me mull this over while I eat more breakfast. Hmm. So this is game design. This is, designing mechanical systems and mini games and such. And it's not easy. I never claimed to be easy. So if you're just watching me sitting here trying to come up with ideas, this is what it is. This is game design. Right. And I want the game to do this thing. How do I craft mechanical systems to produce that thing? We have more breakfast. Yay.
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
Um, I don't mind having another mini game in there. Right. But I would like to. Hmm. I'd like to see if I can keep it simpler than that. Okay, let's see. All right. Ads are done. At least that's what Twitch is telling me. So one idea is a bidding game. where the player wages connection and the GM wages humanity. As in, the connection the player uses has a certain amount of points. The player's like, I would like to get back 3 points of humanity. And the GM is like, okay. Well, you start bidding. Depending on how you bid, that influences the roll. But again, that is very mechanical, and you don't have to play that out. So, no. I'm solving the mechanics issue by implementing an entire game, which is mechanics. Hey. Um. uh, all the ideas I'm having are tied to mechanics, which is something. Hmm. Let's see. Because another idea was that the amount of humanity the player has when they go for the resting scene influences how the scene goes or might go. Because if a player with low humanity goes and, I don't know, meets their family, they might behave very differently from a player who still has relatively high humanity. But again, that is a mechanical prompt for RP. What I need is the other thing. Like, the mechanical prompts for RP are easy. RP prompts for mechanics are difficult in this particular case. So, what can be affected? What can mechanically be affected based on how the scene goes? Or what exactly is the resolution checking for? Because in an investigation scene, the resolution is checking for how the story continues. But because resting scenes are interludes, and I don't know how to tie them into into the wider game, really. Um, it's like, oh, depending on how the resting scene goes, the player character behaves a certain way in future scenes. Yeah, but that's that's kind of like putting a restriction on how the player is allowed to roleplay, and that's very, very loose, very surface level. Um, so not something I want. Um, having two different possible results that the player chooses from, or multiple possible results. Yes, it's a choice, but again, it's a mechanical one. That doesn't help. So here, this bit is something I can definitely think about, because if the outcome has some sort of narrative impact, or is something narrative, right? Because essentially the play through the resolution determines the outcome. So again, I can have this determine the outcome. But what outcome is there that's possible? Hmm. So regaining humanity should always be on the table. And I don't want to put in restrictions, right? In the sense of, oh, what, you went to have dinner with your family? Well, then you can't join then based on the outcome, right? If the evening goes well and you stay there, that means you cannot join the next scene where we're driving to the warehouse at night, right? To investigate it. That's dumb, right? That destroys player agency, and it's in a way it's like it's two bad choices, right? And it's a restriction I don't want to have in the game. Hmm. So the player gets punished. The player gets punished for having low humanity, and then they deal with it and then get punished further by not being able to play the game. That's nah. I don't want that. Um it's too binary. That result is too binary. Just a complete yes, you get to play, or no, you have to sit out for a round. And anyone who's played older board games where you can still sit out for a round, like skip a turn, it sucks. That feeling really sucks. It's like you roll a die and then the die says, "Oh, skip your next turn." It's like, wow, okay, the game is telling me that I don't get to play the game. It sucks. And then the really bad ones have skip 2 turns. It's like, oh my goodness. And then everyone else is having fun, and you're just kind of sitting there going, "Yeah, I'm gonna go watch this movie now." Mm. Hmm. Yeah, no turn skipping. Let me just write that down right here. No turn skipping. No forced. Like if players don't want to join in on a scene for whatever reason, maybe they do think, "Oh well, my character wouldn't do this particularly." Or now you two go do that scene, and simultaneously we will do this other scene, right? But we play yours first, and then we play ours, and so on. Sure, Players are totally allowed to do that, but that is their choice, right? I don't want to force anything like that on them. Okay, I think the problem is that the breadth of outcomes of a resting scene is just too narrow. You can very easily cut it down to like 2 or 3 choices that you can then just pick based on mechanical. Like you can just say, oh, choice A, choice B, choice C, and then I roll for it. Investigation scenes, their outcomes are so broad that you cannot possibly mechanize them in any way. And that's what makes it role playing. Mm, so, because I realized if I just try to add more things to choose from the outcome, right? What about the character's drive to investigate? Can that be affected? That's just another mechanical choice. Mm, maybe I'm also overthinking this. Maybe you don't need to play out resting scenes. And you do make them just a single die roll. You say, I spent 1 timeline point, and roll some dice. Done. Carry on. That could also be a thing. So it's a being able to resolve it purely mechanically is a feature, not a bug. Right? And then players who want to roleplay over it can still do. But players who want to get back to the investigation can do that as well. Okay, completely new idea. Something I've never thought of before. Having something intentionally left as mechanics only, as a quick resolution. So you don't actually have resting scenes. You just have resting roles. I think that was my problem. I was framing them as resting scenes the entire time. So I thought they must have equal weight as investigative scenes, but they don't really have to. They can if a group enjoys doing that, but they don't have to. Hmm. Okay, that's okay. Okay. So, solution to the not actual problem, to this thing that wasn't really a problem. I was just way overthinking it. Uh, there are no. Oh my goodness. There are no resting scenes, just resting rolls. So that means quick mechanical resolution that allows RP but doesn't mandate it. My goodness. My handwriting. Doesn't. Hmm. Okay. Then I don't even need mechanics for like how to frame a resting scene. Well, I don't need to have very complex mechanical outcomes for the resolution. I can have a simple, not a pass fail, but like success with cost thing going on, or just nothing like that at all. Mm, okay. There is also hmm. I'm thinking of how different games approach this. And it doesn't quite fit what I have here. Because the whole thing with resting is it's a single player thing, right? And so I guess it's also good to have that not as a big elaborate scene, but as a quick roll because it is single player. Okay, so there's more and more that speaks for it being just a quick roll that you can RP over if the group enjoys it, but that you don't have to. And then get back to the investigation where the whole group can participate. Okay. Mm, think. What I'm thinking of right now is resting scenes between two players or player characters. Um, well, it's a bit more complex than that because what you can do when you have two players participating in a scene is that each player has a different agenda, and then you play to find out whose agenda uh, succeeds or is the one that determines the outcome. Um, right? And if they are opposed, then you play to find out, right? You don't just choose one of the two because it's two players who are involved, and then you don't want to talk over one of them. You want to play the scene to find out which character's agenda or goal or trait or whatever it is that you have in there, which one actually gets to be the defining one. And that you have in a lot of different games, like a lot of different games that are narrative or character focused, like that. Right, where you have two player characters facing off against each other, and then, I mean, the players could just handshake and say, you know what, your character's agenda sounds more interesting. Let's just decide on that one, and then not play the scene. Um, or both players could say, you know what, I want my character's agenda to come out on top, and the other player says, I want my character's agenda to come out on the top. Okay, and then you play the scene to find out. Um, right, but because resting scenes in this game are purely single player with GM, and the GM giving the GM an agenda, yes, it is done, but in this particular case, feels unfair because the players are already fighting against the systems. They don't also need to fight against the GM. Mm, there is an inherent power imbalance, so you don't want to pit the player and the GM against each other like this in a let's play to find out who comes out on top kind of deal. Um, it might be possible to create a game like that, but this is not the game. This is not it. That is a completely different thing. All right, so but that makes the rules a lot simpler, right? And then I can have a success with cost kind of deal, and then I don't even need a connection strength or anything, or multiple different connections with connection strength. I can just have the same, right? Roll 5 to 6 is +1 humanity. For 3 to 4, 4 to 3 to 4 is +2 humanity, and then 1 to 2 is +3 humanity. Done. And then the player can just write these down as flavor, more or less. And then the player can choose like a connection as flavor. Um, Depending on how the die rolling goes. I mean, they can be flavor, but they can also be implemented in the story somehow, right? So maybe something of like maybe the player is like, oh yeah, spending time with my family is important, and then something in the story threatens the family, and the player has to decide, oh, what is more important? That might be beyond the scope of this game. Um, but it's a fun idea to play around with. Um, yeah, I think I'm happy with this. Right, and then you just roll a single die. You could make a more complex mini game by having multiple different connections with values, and then every time you tap one of them, the value goes down. Or if you burn a connection later on, because like you can also introduce something like, oh, you can burn a connection, like completely cross it out of your character sheet, um, to instantly regain back to max humanity as a final stopgap measure. But then you lose all the points in it. So if you burn a connection with 1 point left or burn a connection with 4 points left, it's the same thing. You lose it completely, etc., etc. And you can do a whole lot with that. There's a lot more design space here. I don't know if that is necessary. That would be playtest, right? So there's a lot more design space that you can do, but right now, since they are not the big focus, that is a complete mechanical mini game. That could be interesting, but something like this, whether or not to have that in the game, is playtest. Right. So I'm gonna think about it a bit more, and then after the ad, I'm going to write it down just to have it. But whether or not to implement it, how much to implement, etc., that really is playtesting. Right? You have to play the game and see, does it add to the game? Does it detract from the game?
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
Playtesting is something that I cannot do really. Need to organize people. And playtesting is more than just playing. Right? So that's not easy. All right. Welcome back. So, so have values. That's like I can look at more mechanics, right? Connections have values. Rolling poorly, instead of getting back more humanity, you lose connection value, right? Oops. Oh my goodness. Handwriting. Lose value. And maybe the amount of connection value determines how much you restore, right? So you want to tap the high value connections. But then you risk losing them or not being able to use them anymore or something, right? And then uh, burning connection to instantly restore all humanity, but lose connection completely. Right. Uh, including value, right? Including all. Right. So if you only have, say, a 3-point connection left and you have to burn that, well, tough luck. Right? You lose all 3. And so on and so forth. So there's more that can be done. Mm, I am playing around with the idea of turning around the mechanic. Instead of like 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, is like 1 and 2 is the best, so on. Turning it around, but again, that is details, right? If people really don't gel with a roll under system, which is a bit counterintuitive, right? They exist, but it's a bit counterintuitive because most systems and most games in general, and just dice and human intuition in general, is roll high is good. So roll over systems tend to be the way to go, and roll under systems, while mathematically possible, are a bit unintuitive. Again, that is playtesting. Turning this thing around is relatively simple. Right? You just flip the numbers more or less. So that, again, that is something I don't have to worry about now. What I do need is scene framing. So better. This is okay, I see what's up. Look at me. Okay, there we go. So scene framing. Right, so scene framing, because the whole game runs off of investigation scenes, right? How do you frame a scene? What do you have to put in there? When do you know where it starts? How do you know when it ends, etc.? Is important. So, um, so scene framing. What does a scene need? My goodness, why is it always like this? What does a so it needs a set, and by set I mean it needs a location, a time, dressing, etc., etc. Right? But most importantly, something like location and time. It needs clues. Clues. Right? So because this is an investigative game, um, you are out there investigating to gather clues. And there are many good guides on how to run investigations on what to do, right? Because how do you make sure that the players will find clues? How do you make sure that they will know where to go? How do you make sure that they're getting closer to the solution? And so on. Mystery scenarios in a lot of games have been not great, but there are systems to run them. And this is and the systems are basically make sure you give them enough clues. There is something by a fellow named Justin Alexander who created three clue rule. That is actually difficult to say out loud. 3-clue rule, which is basically it says you start off as the GM planning the mystery. You start off with a list of things that the players need to know, facts, revelations, and so on, right? And for every one of these, you construct 3 clues and put them in the game. Right? The idea being the players will miss the first, misinterpret the second, and then find the third and know where to go. So having 3 clues for every revelation to solve the next step of the mystery is a safety net, is to make sure that you don't have to railroad the players, right? Because if you only have 1 clue, then they must find it, and then you must railroad, right? If the players must do something, then as a GM, you have to railroad to ensure that the thing that must happen actually happens. But if you put 3 clues in, and once you start down that path, it's very easy to create 4, 5, 6, 7 clues for the same revelation. You can just dump them all in the game. And then the players will find 1 or 2 of them and be like, okay. And then go to the next step of the mystery. And if they find more, that isn't bad, because players getting more clues is always good, right? It makes them feel secure in that they're on the right path. It makes them it's a reward, and so on. And because these clues are all for the same revelation, it's not actually solving the mystery for them. It's still the same revelation. Like, oh, the killer is a werewolf is maybe a revelation, right? And then you have a bunch of different clues, like, I don't know, the killer is never seen around like a full moon or so, right? So every full moon, the dude calls in sick. There is wolf fur. There are claw marks on walls and so on and on the crime scene, right? And so on and so on forth. And finding 1 or 2 of these clues can lead the players to think like, maybe there's a werewolf involved, right? They find out, okay, full moon, yeah, that's a werewolf connection. There's wolf fur, yeah, okay, there's something to do with wolves here. And then they find the claw marks. It's like, okay, I'm definitely sure there's something with wolves here, right? And then you get a picture of the dude, and he's super hairy or has a long nose, like a snout almost. And then the players go, okay, I'm very, very certain this is a werewolf thing now. But it's still the same revelation. You haven't told them anything extra about any other revelations, any other things to solve, right? So, yeah, so that's the power of the 3-clue rule. So use that, right? And then make sure that you put clues into your scenes to be found, right? And then the players play to find the clues. And there are generally also 2 types of clues. There's they don't have official names, but there's basically the clues that help solve the mystery, and there's clues that lead you to the next scene where you can find more clues, right? And I think they're called like hints and trails or something, or some people call them hints and trails. Right. So a hint is something that tells you about the bigger solution. The killer's a werewolf. And a trail would be something like, our primary suspect works at this and that factory. Let's go to that factory and search. Right? It doesn't tell you much about the solution of the puzzle that he's a werewolf, but it does tell you where you can go to find more clues. Whether or not that distinction is all that important is something else. It's useful to keep in mind, but that's not what we're bothered with right now, right? Whether you put in hints or trails, maybe have a combination of both. Maybe some clues are both at the same time. That would be really cool. But it's not a clear cut like distinction. But yeah, clues. They need clues in there that players can find. At least one, but more than one is much better. Again, the 3-clue rule also kind of states you might want more than one clue in a scene because maybe players don't find all the clues. Maybe they only find one of them. And again, if there's only one clue in the scene and they must find that clue, then you have to resort to railroading again. Right? But if you have like 3 or 4 or 5 clues scattered about and they just look around a bit and then find 1 or 2 of them, then the scene is a success and then they can continue. Right? So that's how this works. So it needs clues. And then it needs anything. It needs an agenda and a goal. So let me write that down first. I'm not sure if I'm using these terms correctly. But basically, what this means is the players. Right? So all of the clues bit is GM, but the players need to also have some sort of idea of what they want to achieve with the scene before going into it. And the GM should know or needs to know what this plan is before framing the scene, right? Because this allows for things like, where do I start the scene? Right? If the players are entering a city, and in some fantasy game, for instance, and then they say, "Oh, let's go to the tavern." And the GM, there's this is so wide open. The GM can then actually play the trek from the city gate to the tavern, or the GM can start them off somewhere further in the city, like in the marketplace or something, and then they still have to find the tavern or whatever. There are lots and lots of different possibilities. Or the GM can ask, "Hey, what do you want to do at the tavern?" And the players can say, "Oh, we have this letter that we found in the dungeon addressed to this dude who's supposed to be in the tavern, right? Waiting for whoever sent this letter. And we want to go there and check if this person is there and so on, and maybe interrogate them." And then the GM can cut straight to, "All right, after sitting down and ordering drinks at the tavern, you indeed notice a shady-looking fellow sitting in the corner." Right? And then you can cut out so much. Because this is scene framing. This is now scene framing skills, more like that. So this allows you to cut the scene as close to the first decision point by the players as possible. Right? So that the players don't meander, so that the players meandering is not a bad thing necessarily. What is a bad thing if the players don't know what's going on and then just kind of randomly guess at a possible next action. And then the GM has to improvise based on this possible next action and maybe steer them back to what they actually wanted to do, and then the players are more confused. It's like, wait, I can do anything, right? So let me go to the blacksmith instead. And the GM's like, oh my goodness, what the I just mentally prepared for the tavern. What's going on in the blacksmith? And now I have to flip open the black, and then the player is like, and then the player suddenly starts shopping and haggling. It's very much like the players, if they don't know what's going on, it's harder to appreciate and enjoy the story, right? Because you're not so much creating a story together, you are just lost. And because you're a player sitting at the table, you're not the character in the world, right? You have a completely different view. You're not in the situation. You are, and you know that you are a protagonist in a story, but you don't know what the next step is for this protagonist, and you don't know what's actually there in the world, and then you're just lost. And being lost in a game of infinite possibilities is not really enjoyable. So the whole agenda goal thing from the player's side tells the GM where to start the scene and where to end the scene. That's very important. Right? Because once the players say, okay, we have this goal in the scene, we did it, even if they haven't found all the clues, right? Finding all the clues is not the condition to end the scene. They might only find one. They should find at least one, right? So don't end the scene before they found one, at least. But after that, the players can say, all right, goal is accomplished, done. And then you end the scene and go to the resolution bit. And then not end the scene. No, afterwards, you need lead in for resolution. Oh my goodness. Which requires some sort of instigation or tension. Conflict. And then you roll for it, right? So when you roll, you decide, okay, what are we playing for? Who's doing what? What are the positions? What are the possible outcomes? You discuss all of that, and then you roll. Players, you lose humanity or not, they succeed or not. And then end scene, frame next one. Right? That's what this needs. And all of this is more GM guide. So this is the GM's job. The GM's job is twofold. The GM's job is on the mystery, right? Have a revelation list and clues, right? And then on the play side, put clues in scene and start and end scene. The GM doesn't need to determine things like the set of the scene. The players can give that. The players can say, we want to go to the warehouse this night. And so the players have decided the set of the scene. That is a good thing. That takes work out of the GM's hands. And the GM's job is already pretty tough. And anything that takes work out of the GM's hands is a good thing. So the players just say, we want to go there and there. or we want to investigate this and this, and then the GM's job is to put clues in the scene and to start the scene, right? Open it up, say you you managed to sneak past the lone sleeping security guard at the warehouse and are now standing in front of the locked door leading into it. Boom. That's the start. And then to wrap up the scene, and of course, implement conflict, like the rising tension. Right, that's during the playing of the scene. The players do their thing. They investigate. They open locks. They look through boxes. They talk to people, and then the GM has their guides and their lists and such, and then they implement rising tension as it goes on. How this works, this is like a whole GM section on how to play the game, right? But this is what the GM is supposed to do, because then that leads to the roll. And the roll is a negotiation. The resolution is a negotiation. So the resolution, right? The roll is a is a negotiation, right? Of things like sides, stakes, and goals. Who's what? Who's doing what? If we fail, what happens? If we succeed, what happens? Right? And then the shared denouement. Denouement. There we go. Huh. I think this is done. I could implement a possible extra for how to get more time, like increase the time limit. Maybe, right? Extra mechanic. Come on. Bidding with time. All right, so there's a chance you lose more time, but there's also a chance you might gain time depending on what kind of actions you take. That is also something that can be done. If there's like 3 points left in the time pool and the players are like, oh, we need like 1 or 2 more. We have to risk it. We have to risk buying ourselves more time. Right? We have to risk losing time in order to try and buy ourselves more time. And yeah, then and then go from there. And because it's like if we don't get more time, we basically don't win. So we have to do this this Hail Mary last ditch last ditch effort move. Okay. I think this is done. Not done as in finished completely, like completed project done, but done as in the design part is done. What's left is writing it out, playtesting, developing, all that good stuff. Coming down up with details, right? How many dice do I actually roll? Right? What do I call things? Because calling time limit points is Do I want the rolls to go up or go down? Right? How many time limit points should there be? Etc. Etc. That is all development. That is all things you find out during playtesting and seeing how does this game play. And maybe you test this and then you find out, oh no, this is no fun. Oh no, this is completely broken. It doesn't work. That can also happen. Um, then you go back to the drawing board. But as a first draft, I can now playtest this. And playtesting, not playing. Playtesting is very, very different, right? As an I can now playtest this. As far as I can see, this is complete. So, I'm going to use the upcoming ad break to have a quick stretch, get up, and such. And then I'll see what I do, how I continue. But yeah, I will see you on the other side. I will be right back, in fact. Okay, I'm back. Let's see. Writing this thing up is a bit beyond the scope of this stream, and I don't know if I'll get to it or not. So as far as I can tell, this would be done. Filled 3 whole 3 canvases. Dang. Um so I'm thinking on what to do next. I might just call it here. I don't know if like starting to design a new game now and then uh what am I thinking? And then just get in the middle of something is worth it. Like start next week in the middle of something is worth it. Um so yeah, I think I am going to call it here. Okay, so let me go to this. Okay, so this was actually a lot of fun. Look for someone to raid. Okay, I know who we are going to raid. We are going to raid Lex Parte, who graduated a while ago and is now back. Is maybe crap. Tablet is maybe in the process of rebranding, not sure. But in any case, a very, very comfy streamer, very comfy VTuber. Voice like velvet. So definitely go say hi. I'm not sure if this is like an exception of a stream or if this is like something more regular, but ex parte VT. Yeah. But yes, definitely. Oh, it doesn't allow raids. Oh no. Rip. Ah well. Okay, then we'll have to look for someone else then. But you can still check him out. Let me close some things here. This is who else is on? There's a couple of people on. What about this? Okay, let's go raid Lottle and Vix instead. So Lottle and Vixena, who stream together on the same channel, and they are adorable. They are really cool people. Who who are currently streaming Puzzles and Survival. I have no idea what that is. It looks like a mobile game. Maybe. But yeah, let's go say hi to Lottle and Vix. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, thank you everyone for coming by. This was a lot of fun. I will continue, well, not continue this game next week. I will do game designing in next week and start off a new game, right? What else? I will be back on Sunday. And with more V Rising. All right. And then next week. Okay. So yeah. Thanks everyone for coming by. Take care and bye-bye.